Hello everyone. I decided I wanted to take a little bit of time and record a little video on catasetenid culture and my tips for a happy catasetum. So catasetums are a very diverse group. There's several different genera that are all under the group Catasetini, and I have a few of them. I don't have a ton, but I have a few, and I have enough to that where I know that certain things work and certain things don't for certain plants. So in front of me I have a pile of them, and I'm going to go through them one at a time and also talk about how I care for them and what I do to make sure that they are happy and healthy. So the first one here, this is my only Catasetum pure cross. The others are intergenerics. This is Catasetum Chuck Taylor crossed on Catasetum denticulatum. It's a small little plant, but it's, as you can see here, it's completely dormant. No signs of growth yet. It had a growth when it was being shipped, a very small, like barely started growth, but it is now, it fell off during shipping, and so it's continuing to not grow. So it'll start growing soon, but for sure, because it was early enough to where the plant didn't invest very much. But this here, when it's fully dormant like this, now this is in my opinion, the optimal time to repot, when you see either a new growth starting or just before, so you can get the moss out and replace the media with whatever you want to use. I use pure moss for my catasetums, and so at this stage, you want it to stay dry, like not a drop of water in the media. The only reason you'd ever want to water is if the back bulb wrinkles, and mine, as you can see, is not wrinkling. It's got the normal shape. And so when it wrinkles, you want to give it just a little bit of a drink to plump it back up. Sometimes even just a spritz to the top of the moss is enough to plump them back up. But you want to watch for growth. When growth begins, it'll form at the base, and then you can start watering once the roots reach. For me, I wait until the roots are at least 1.5 inches long, to where they have some absorption, because the roots start out not absorbing water when they first form. And when the leaves on the growth are starting to unfurl finally. But at this stage, no water, and that's crucial, because if they're watered early, they can and often will experience rot. So this one here is a intergeneric. This is a Cloizia crossed on Mormodes, which creates the hybrid genre Mormodia. This is Mormodia Carrie Ray, named after my mom's cousin who passed away just before her wedding. And that's the actual registered hybrid name. So that's what the cross is known as. The cross itself is Cloizia Greystone crossed on Mormodes Worzetii or Worschwetii. Not good pronunciation. But as you can see, this is a little bit a bigger plant. This is a blooming size, and you can see it's bloomed before with those bloom spike stubs. Let me actually set it down. So if we take a look at it here, you can see right here there's a growth. It's just it's early, like you see there's no leaves yet. It's just starting to grow. At this stage, you still want to keep them dry, and as you can see, the newest bulb, which is the one that you need to watch for, hasn't wrinkled at all, so no water. These older ones supplied this growth, so they're going to be a little bit wrinkled naturally. But it's still too early to water, and even if I were to get in there and it doesn't seem to want to focus, there is a root starting, but I still need to wait for the roots to reach at least 1 inch or so long before I start watering, and wait until the leaves unfurl. But the Cloizias are also, all of these need a dormancy. Let me preface with that. All of these need a dormancy. Some of them need a harsher one than others. Catasetums need a fairly harsh dormancy, as do intergenerics like this Mormodia here. But for me, I typically unpot them when I get them. I leave them unpotted until growth begins, or until I need to refresh the media, whatever comes first. And then when it's time to pot it up, I'll pot it into fresh moss, leave it bone dry. Occasionally I'll give a spritz, because it does get a little bit dry even in the greenhouse sometimes. So I'll give it a little bit of a light spritz, but only rarely. Catasetums and catasetum related hybrids like Cloizia and Mormodia here, they need a little bit more of a dormancy. And so they will go dormant in the fall, set spikes and bloom, and then they'll sit dormant for a while until they start growing. This one, like I said, is starting to grow. and so it will grow, and then it'll eventually get. Usually, for me, the growths usually get a few inches tall, and then the roots are a couple inches before I start watering. That's usually when they both meet up at a point where I can water. But they're fairly simple other than that. During dormancy, you just want to keep them bright, warm, or not warm, but warm-ish, and then dry. And that's what I do for those. And then I'm going to touch on this one next. So this is a Fred Clarkiara. As you can see here, the back, the newest bulb is actually a little bit wrinkled, and that's a sign that it could use a little bit of a drink. But if you see at the base here, let me see if I can get it to stay steady and then focus. On the right there is a new growth starting, and there is another one on the left buried down in there. But I can't get it to focus on that one because it's barely popping out, but it's at the tip of my finger there. So this one looks like it's going to have two. But in this kind of case, it doesn't need a heavy watering, just a little bit here and there to make sure the bulb doesn't shrivel too much. But Fred Clarkiara are a compound hybrid of Mormodia, Cloisia, and Catasetenid. So they are a little bit of a mix between all three of the groups that typically need a bit more of a rest and a more pronounced rest. And so for Fred Clarkiaras, you want to make sure that they stay dry. And if they wrinkle a little bit like this, give them just a light drink. But otherwise, they're similar to the predecessors. Now this one, I have a couple that are in growth, and it's an odd time of year for growth, but they just are. So this first one here that's sitting in front, this is Catamoides Dragon's Glade. It's a cross of Catamoides Dragontail Darktail crossed on Catasetenid Orchid Glade Davy Ranches, AMAOS. It's a rewarded hybrid. The Orchid Glade parent. And so what it did is this was the bulb it grew last year, and it's nice and plump and huge, as you can see, compared to the one behind it. And it still got its leaves, but even though it was kept dry just like the rest, it did not want to go fully dormant, and so I was forced to respect that as the growth got a little bit farther along and was ready for water. So this is the new growth here. It's doing pretty well. It's still growing some leaves and is otherwise very healthy looking. It's also grown roots and everything. This has been watered for about a month, at least a month now. Actually, a little bit longer than that. And these parent bulb leaves are finally starting to yellow. As you can see, like this one's yellowing. They're yellowing at the top, and they look like they might actually start to drop now. But if a Catasetenid does not want to go fully dormant, no matter what you do, my words are: do not force it. If a Catasetenid is not ready to do it or does not want to do it, I do not force it, because especially if it's trying to grow, like this one was starting to grow, trying to force it to go dormant while it's already starting to grow will stress out the plant and will even cause the new growth to have to pull off of the old bulbs a lot harder than it would normally while it's starting growth during dormancy. So for Catasetenids that don't want to go dormant like this one, I just let them be. I did dry it out a little bit more than usual because the new growth did not have roots yet, and I didn't want to have any issues. But the parent bulb has active live roots. They're not growing anymore because it's a mature bulb, but they're active roots, and so it could take up the water and was not at risk of having any rot. And let me put this one away real quick so I actually have some room to look. Here's the other one that did not want to go dormant. This is Moneriara Millennium Magic Witchcraft. It's a very popular black Catasetenid type orchid. Now, I do not know what the compound genus for Moneriara is, like what components are in it. I believe Mormodia or Cygnodes, Catasetenid, and Cloisia, I think, but I'm not at all sure, so I'm not going to make any claims to knowing. So this one is a hybrid that is famous for skipping its dormancy. No matter, like, you can do everything right and it's still going to skip the dormancy. And as you can see, this is one of the bract leaves at the bottom of the new growth. But this was the original bulb. There's a small little bulb right here, but this was the original bulb. This one, after it dropped its leaves for me, it immediately launched into growth. It was supposed to spike again, but it didn't because it spiked here already. But it immediately launched into growth. And so here's the growth now. It's starting to actually plump up the pseudo bulb, and you can see it's a little bit fatter and chunkier down here, and there's no new leaves growing out of the crown. So this one's just gonna start rapidly plumping that bulb until it gets hopefully as big as this one. But it's way taller than this one, significantly taller. But this one, if any of you guys have one and it doesn't go dormant for you, never fear. This hybrid is famous for it and will grow just fine. Although you want to try and encourage it the next season. You don't want to let them grow several years without a dormancy. That's very bad for them. But Millennium Magic is famous for skipping one every now and then and just launching straight into growth. But they're very big plants. The new growths are very large, very fan-like. And so they are definitely not space savers during their growth period. But during their dormancy, like the Mormodia here, they take up very little space, and you can even unpot them and forget about them in the corner. And so the last one is another Fred Clarkara. Same story as before. They are a compound genus of 3 different groups that prefer a little bit more pronounced rest. This one has not started growth yet, as it just finished flowering not long ago off these 2 spikes. This is After Dark Black Pearl, which has an FCC AOS award. Here's the tag for that one. And I got it from New Earth Orchids in Santa Fe. And so this one, same story. The bulb's a little bit wrinkled. They tend to grow all out, and during flowering, that can take a lot of energy out of the bulb. So this one is going to get light occasional sprays and keep the bulb from shriveling anymore. But this one did not take any probs. It was already going dormant when I got it, and it had one lousy little leaf left that fell off soon after I got it. But for my Catasetums, like I said, I never forced them to go dormant. When I encourage them, though, what I do is by around September, as the bulbs are starting to round off and harden up, I start to slow down water and slow down the frequency. This tells the bulb or the plant that it's getting close to dormancy time and they need to finish up the bulb. So they're gonna finish up the bulb, and anywhere from October to as late as January, I've seen when they're entering dormancy, most of them will set spikes going into dormancy. Some will set spikes before dormancy while the leaves are still there. Some will set spikes after dormancy, or after dormancy begins and they're leafless entirely. But for at least for all the ones I have and a lot of the ones I've seen, they set spikes as dormancy is beginning or occurring and start to slide in. And so temperature is also key. If it's really warm, it's going to help discourage them from going dormant. So you want to let the temperature drop a little bit more than you normally would. And humidity needs to stay fairly high for them. But you start to slow down water, and by, let's say, for me, by November, water is cut in half. By October, by Halloween, water is cut down to about a third. Or no, 2/3, about 2/3, so a little bit less. By Thanksgiving, it's cut down to half, and by Christmas, it's cut off entirely. So you want to start gradually getting off, reducing the amount of water. So let's say, just a hypothetical, because they would obviously take a lot more, but let's say you have a Catasetum that takes a cup of water. Like on a weekly basis, you give it a cup of water. They would obviously need a lot more than that, but just hypothetically. By Halloween, you'd want to cut that down to 2/3 of a cup. By Thanksgiving, half a cup or just under. And by Christmas, you want to be giving it no water whatsoever, or at least bare minimum spray on top of the moss. That's going to trigger the bulb to go dormant. It's going to slowly start to yellow and drop its leaves and pull the nutrients back into the bulb and prepare for dormancy. If your plant is blooming size, that is typically when you will see spikes start to form, either just before that point or just after. And then you'll get to enjoy the blooms. During blooming, I tend to give them occasional sprays, even if they're leafless, because the plant does put a lot of energy into the spikes, and so I give it a little bit of water here and there. If it blooms. If it doesn't bloom, or it's already bloomed, no water whatsoever. Bright light during growth, though. You will see here, you can see the lime green and light bright color of these leaves. That's what you want. That tells you that your orchid is getting enough light, and Catasetums like a lot of light and a lot of water and a lot of fertilizer. They're very heavy feeders and very heavy drinkers, and so you want to make sure they get the nutrients, or else the bulb will not reach full potential, and you may not even get spikes if it's young enough. If you get the bulb to grow enough, you might get spikes early, but You want to make sure that they get all the energy they need in preparation for dormancy, because Catasetum types are very rapid growers, very rapid. They'll grow from a nub up into a full size with a bulb in not even a whole year. And they take like a while to get huge, the plants, because they only grow typically 1 or 2 bulbs a year, unless you get a really big plant. But the bulbs themselves and the plant is very rapidly growing. Roots will grow very rapidly as well, and the leaves and bulb will grow very rapidly. But it invests a lot of energy into one giant bulb rather than a bunch of smaller ones like an oncidium would. And then it goes dormant after. These bulbs act as food stores and water stores for the dormancy. And so you want to make sure they get to their full potential so that you can get spikes and a good start on the growing year next year. But I believe that is all for my quick little tips and Catasetum lookup. Those are just the Catasetum types I have. If you have any questions about Catasetums and their culture and what they prefer, please do leave them in the comments below, and I would be more than happy to answer them. And please do look forward for more updates, as some of these plants will probably be individuals in daily spotlights in the near future, or in the future. So be sure to be on the lookout for those and keep up to date, as of right now, every single day there will be a plant update. But I do plan to shorten it and lengthen it out a little bit more to every other day at least, to stretch it out a little bit more. But to get my channel up and going, I want to give it a good start and do daily videos. I will put out an announcement ahead of time when video periods start to lengthen out a little bit more. And I will also sometimes post advanced notices about what the videos will be about, so you can be sure to tune in when it first goes up. So thank you everyone for joining me, and have a nice night.